And to see the strides that have been made for people who truly were able to contribute a different way is truly remarkable. You know, I'm going to say this, I don't like to say things that are controversial at all, but this game is going to overtake all the other sports.
This is Jerry West, an icon who transformed basketball with his clutch shooting and unshakable determination. Known as the Logo, West became a symbol of excellence both as a player and as an executive. A 14-time All-Star, NBA champion, scoring phenom, and the definition of clutch, his name is etched in every corner of basketball history. But what truly sets him apart was never just his illustrious career. It was the profound respect he holds for the players who defined his era and pushed him to become one of the greatest of all time. So let's dive into the players Jerry West admired most during his unforgettable playing career. The players who left the biggest impression on the Logo, and the last player on the list is the greatest of all time. But before proceeding, please take a second and hit that subscribe button, and like this video, this will mean the world to us. Thanks. Elgin Baylor, the creative pioneer. West never hesitated to call Elgin Baylor the most creative player I ever saw, a statement that seems almost understated when you understand his sheer brilliance. Baylor was never just a scorer or a forward. He was an artist who transformed the possibilities of basketball with his explosiveness, body control, and unmatched flair in the air. West admired how Baylor constantly made defenders look lost and bewildered. He played like no one else in the league. He had moves that just confused defenders constantly, West recounted, and playing alongside him wasn't just a privilege for West, it was educational. His creativity was part of every possession, elevating the game in ways that were revolutionary for his era. And before he became the creative force of the Los Angeles Lakers, his story was shaped by hardship and perseverance. Coming out of Washington, D.C., Baylor was a standout player in high school, but gained limited attention due to segregation and systemic discrimination in basketball recruiting during the era. He didn't have the clear path to basketball brilliance that many contemporaries enjoyed. Instead, he played in isolated gyms, mastering his craft away from the limelight. And his breakout came at Seattle University, where he became a dominant figure in college basketball, leading his team to the NCAA finals and paving his way to stardom. But even as he entered the NBA in 1958 with the Minneapolis Lakers, the league had never seen anything remotely like him. And his rookie season put everyone on notice, 24.9 points and 15 rebounds per game, while lifting a declining Lakers franchise into title contention merely overnight. Elgin didn't just debut. He announced his arrival with authority and creativity, forcing defenders into a guessing game they could never win. And that didn't take long for Baylor to redefine the forward position. He was ahead of his time in every conceivable way. The NBA of the late 1950s and early 1960s wasn't built for a player who possessed his mix of finesse, power, and aerial artistry. His ability to hang in the air before delivering impossibly smooth finishes made him a nightmare to guard. Elgin was unbelievable in the way he just froze defenders, West would say years later. They'd think they knew what he was doing, and then they'd be wrong. Baylor averaged 29.6 points and 16.4 rebounds in just his second season, cementing himself as one of the league's brightest stars. And he was carrying the Lakers, often single-handedly, grinding out points when his teammates couldn't and keeping the team competitive against dynasties like the Celtics. And the duo of Baylor and West brought life back into the Lakers franchise when it relocated to Los Angeles in 1960. Together, they formed one of the league's most dynamic partnerships, but West never failed to credit him for being the offensive anchor that set the tone night after night. Baylor wasn't just an elite scorer. He was a relentless rebounder, grabbing rebounds at a clip that would make most centers jealous. His career averages of 27.4 points and 13.5 rebounds speak to his two-way brilliance, numbers almost unimaginable for a forward even today. And yet his career was marked by an ability to do things that went beyond the numbers, which West always highlighted. Watching him play was almost like seeing art in motion. His athleticism, his creativity, his vision. It was all so smooth and ahead of its time, West said, describing how his moves shifted the boundaries of what basketball players could achieve on offense. He could single-handedly lift the Lakers, inspiring teammates and keeping them focused, even when hopes seemed distant during games or seasons. but Baylor's brilliance was rooted in his sheer determination to win. He was never satisfied with highlight plays or jaw-dropping sequences. He lived for competition, a trait that mirrored West's own unrelenting drive. And together, they pushed each other and their Lakers squads through countless battles against league powerhouses. West praised Baylor's no-excuses mindset in those intense showdowns. Elgin grew his IQ as much as his talent. He didn't just play harder, he thought smarter, West said of his adaptability. However, Baylor's career wasn't all triumph and celebration. His time in basketball overlapped with societal struggles and racial injustice, giving his presence on the court even greater meaning. He was one of the few black superstars in the NBA during his prime, playing against the backdrop of civil rights battles in America. And off the court, he faced continuous discrimination that shaped his identity as more than a basketball player. He became a larger symbol of perseverance. In a historic moment of protest, he refused to play a game in Charleston, West Virginia in 1959 after enduring segregation at his team's hotel. Though his refusal sparked controversy at the time, it's now viewed as a brave act of defiance by a man unwilling to compromise his dignity. Elgin was more than a player. He was a leader, an inspiration, West said, emphasizing his heroism beyond sports. And those acts of courage added even more gravity to his impact for West and teammates during the tumultuous years of his career. And while he never captured a championship during his career, his teams were repeatedly thwarted by the dominant Boston Celtics. West believes Baylor's brilliance should never be judged solely by rings. Elgin did everything short of winning a title, but that doesn't diminish who he was. He changed basketball every night he was on the court, West affirmed. And the Lakers did win their elusive championship in 1972, just months after Baylor retired, but West remained adamant about his role in laying the foundation for the team's success. Baylor retired as the third highest scorer in NBA history at the time, but his real legacy extended far beyond statistics. For West, he was the standard of creativity and resilience, the player from whom the next generation of forwards borrowed their blueprints. You can see his stamp all over the game, even today, West said proudly. Baylor wasn't just a teammate to Jerry West. He was an inspiration, both professionally and personally. And his unmatched creativity didn't just redefine basketball, it redefined what it meant to compete at the highest level. But hold on, everything we have covered about Baylor wouldn't have been possible without this player. In fact, he was the masterpiece of the Lakers dynasty. Wilt Chamberlain, the human Goliath. He was a phenomenon and a force of nature that defied comprehension. Standing 7'1" with an inconceivable mix of strength, agility, and skill, Wilt's impact stretched far beyond the hardwood. He wasn't just great, he was awe-inspiring, and West knew it better than most. And their relationship wasn't just professional, it transformed over time, especially when they teamed up toward the latter stages of their careers, culminating in a championship for the Los Angeles Lakers in 1972. That win was a testament to Wilt's evolution as a player. Wilt wasn't just dominant physically, he was dominant mentally, Jerry reminisced years later. When Wilt turned his mind to controlling the game, he was unstoppable. And before they became teammates, his dominance haunted West. Facing Wilt meant confronting the highest statistical benchmarks the league had ever seen. His stats still boggle the mind today. The all-time record for points in a game with 100, seasons averaging more than 50 points per game, and over 23,000 rebounds, an all-time NBA record. And his numbers became stories of legend. But those weren't just stats for West. Those were daily realities against which he had to compete. When he was on the court, it didn't feel fair. You couldn't outwork Wilt. You couldn't outthink him either. He was relentless, West would recount. And yet, from adversarial battles to being on the same side, his perspective expanded on what Wilt truly brought to the game beyond raw numbers. For all his physical gifts, there was an intellectual edge to his approach to basketball, and his NBA journey was legendary even before he teamed up with West. He entered the league in 1959, surrounded by unprecedented hype. Towering above the competition and outclassing even the most gifted athletes, Wilt delivered right from the start. The Philadelphia Warriors rookie averaged an astonishing 37.6 points and 27 rebounds per game, immediately proving he was the new standard for dominance. and by the time he was a few seasons in, he had delivered his iconic 100-point game in 1962, a feat so great it bordered on mythical. But beyond that scoring avalanche came another statistic that West couldn't help but admired, the fact that Wilt led the league in assists one year as a pivot. People think of Wilt as just the scorer, but they miss the point completely. He was an absolute genius on the floor. He did everything, and when he wanted to, he'd move the ball better than anyone else, West explained. But as dominant as Wilt seemed, his early years were defined just as much by playoff heartbreak. His path mirrored Jerry's own struggles, monumental individual efforts overtaken by heartbreaking losses. The Boston Celtics, led by Bill Russell, repeatedly eliminated Wilt's teams in the postseason. His critics used this narrative against him, labeling him as a stat stuffer, incapable of winning on the biggest stage. West, who experienced his fair share of crushing finals defeats, could sympathize. People didn't understand Wilt's burden. They didn't realize how much pressure was always on him, how much he wanted to win, West said. And still, the critics fueled a perception of him as being all talent with no substance, something that deeply frustrated his rival-turned-teammate. It was unfair, West emphasized. They never actually saw what Wilt sacrificed for his teams, and as the 1960s came to an end, Wilt's narrative began to shift. In 1968, a trade sent him from Philadelphia to Los Angeles, where he and West finally joined forces. And at first, the partnership wasn't seamless. It was still seen as larger than life, while West, known for his work ethic and laser focus, had to adjust to the presence of basketball's greatest physical marvel. In Los Angeles, Wilt transformed from the unstoppable solo act to the indispensable team player. That evolution culminated in the 1971-72 season. It was a record-breaking year for the Lakers, who compiled a remarkable 69-13 record and put together an unprecedented 33-game win streak. And in the finals, facing the New York Knicks, he dominated defensively, even playing with a broken wrist in the decisive Game 5 en route to earning Finals MVP honors. For West, that performance embodied everything Wilt had become. He gave up the glory, the scoring titles, the headlines, to win, West reflected. We wouldn't have been champions without him. He redefined what it meant to be a teammate, and that championship was his greatest masterpiece. And years later, when asked about his experience playing alongside the most physical dominant player ever, West echoed the sentiment of eternal gratitude. It was once in a lifetime. I don't think anybody before, during, or after Wilt will ever be like him. That tribute wasn't about his size or statistics. It was a reflection of the complete transformation of a player who defined greatness by embracing something bigger than dominance, the ultimate goal of winning as a team. If you know the Celtics, then you definitely have to watch this player's story, and in fact, Jerry West considered him as the glue of the Celtics dynasty. Bill Russell, the ultimate winner. Bill stood as the immovable object in Jerry West's path, the kryptonite every Lakers fan dreaded. His teams were stacked with talent, but Bill's Celtics always seemed to have the answers. And as painful and tough as their rivalry was, West never hesitated to shower Bill with admiration. He was the smartest player I ever competed against, West often admitted. Russell didn't just rely on physical gifts. His game had layers of intellect and strategy that consistently outmaneuvered entire teams. Bill didn't beat you just with his defense. He beat you with his brain. He made the entire Celtics team better. And those words were not just praise. They were an acknowledgement of how his presence altered the very fabric of their matchups, turning championship dreams into heartbreaking reality for West and the Lakers year after year. And the story of his success began long before those intense finals battles against Jerry West. He was born in segregated America, growing up in Monroe, Louisiana, where enduring adversity was part of his daily life. Basketball became his refuge, but even as he dominated at McClymonds High School and later at the University of San Francisco, he dealt with constant doubts. Critics questioned his offensive game and belittled his raw, defense-first approach. And by the time Russell entered the NBA in 1956, those same traits would redefine the league. He joined a Boston Celtics squad that hadn't tasted a championship, and by his rookie season, he made them winners. His impact was immediate, averaging over 19 rebounds per game while neutralizing opposing bigs with his defensive mastery. Boston didn't just gain a great player, they gained a leader who would elevate the organization to historic heights. From his second season onward, Bill routinely dominated both ends of the floor, helping the Celtics to championship glory almost every year. And in the early years of their rivalry, Bill's Celtics and Jerry West's Lakers clashed in tightly contested battles, fueled by star power and relentless strategy. However, those games quickly devolved into the same painful script for West. His defensive brilliance became a nightmare for the Lakers' offense, and despite West's near-heroic performances, games where he dropped numbers as high as 53 points or posted 10 assists in high-stakes situations, the Celtics always managed to snatch victory from the Lakers. It was brutal, West confessed later in his career, but it was Russell who made it unbearable. His shot-blocking instincts, defensive rotations, and unmatched rebounding not only neutralized scoring opportunities, but shifted momentum in Boston's favor more often than not. No matter how hard you tried, you couldn't outthink Bill, West said. Their finals became the stuff of legend and heartbreak. From the late 50s through the late 60s, the Lakers battled the Celtics 7 times for the championship. Bill's Celtics won all 7. It's hard to describe what those losses did to me, West said years later. It wasn't just losing, it was losing to the same guy, the same team. You start questioning everything. And while West soldiered through close games, Russell's leadership remained unshaken. He didn't just dominate physically, he energized his teammates to carry out the kind of perfect defensive schemes that suffocated opponents. West called him the glue of the Celtics dynasty more than once. Where most players focused on their individual stats, Bill's focus lay entirely on winning. His 11 championships, a record that feels untouchable, stand as the ultimate testament to his mentality. And while the competition between Bill and West on the court seemed heated, their mutual respect off the court was unshakable. Russell was the ultimate force that West had to contend with, but he also became one of the figures West admired most in all of sports. Going against Bill made you better, West explained in interviews. He forced you to think 3 steps ahead, and I'll always be thankful for what that meant to me as a competitor. The rivalry wasn't just about basketball accolades, it stretched into personal growth. And for West, competing against him elevated every aspect of his game, and his brilliance extended far beyond the hardwood. He was a trailblazer during the civil rights era, becoming one of the earliest sports icons to speak out against systemic racism and injustice. He boycotted games, advocated for equality, and lived as a pioneer for social change. Bill wasn't just a great player, he was a great man, West remarked. He used his platform for something bigger, and that's something that goes beyond any championship or rivalry. Russell's legacy as a leader transcended the confines of basketball. He was unapologetically outspoken, fiercely dignified, and unwaveringly principled in his stances. Those attributes only deepened West's sense of admiration for his longtime adversary. For West, competing against Russell had larger lessons about strength, resilience, and leadership, and those lessons stayed with him for the rest of his life. And to Jerry West, Bill wasn't just a rival. He was the standard of excellence, the immovable challenge that shaped West's own relentless hunger for greatness. Russell's cerebral approach to basketball, combined with his unshakable leadership, shifted the expectations of what it meant to be a champion. Oscar Robertson, the all-around genius. West never hesitated to speak with reverence when discussing the man known as the Big O. For West, he was transformative, a player who elevated every facet of the game and forced opponents to reassess their limits. Oscar could do everything, West said in an interview. He could score, pass, rebound. He was unstoppable in nearly every moment of the game. You just couldn't hope to stop him. You had to slow him down a bit. Coming from the logo, a master technician on offense and defense, those words carried profound weight. Robertson wasn't simply someone West competed against. He was an example of basketball perfection, a standard few in any generation could ever hope to match. And his early journey into basketball brilliance was rooted in struggle and determination. Growing up in Indianapolis during an era of intense racial discrimination, Oscar not only had to fight for his place on the hardwood, but also for his dignity off it. Oscar came from circumstances that most of us could never imagine, West explained, speaking to the grit that shaped his unwavering focus. And despite limited opportunities, the young Robertson excelled within the fledgling basketball scene. At Crispus Attucks High School, He led his team to the first ever Indiana State Championship for a segregated school, a moment that was as historic off the court as it was on it. And for West and many others who followed his career, these early triumphs represented more than just athletic success. They were a symbol of resilience and social progress. By the time Robertson entered the University of Cincinnati, his dominance was undeniable. He averaged an astonishing 33.8 points and 15.2 rebounds per game during his collegiate career, leaving no doubt that basketball was witnessing the emergence of someone exceptional. And when he entered the NBA in 1960 as the first overall pick for the Cincinnati Royals, the league was unprepared for the complete package he brought to the table. At a time when specialization defined most players' roles, Robertson was rewriting the rulebook by excelling across multiple areas of the game. His rookie season was never just a strong start. It was a revelation. He averaged 30.5 points, 10.1 rebounds, and 9.7 assists, immediately establishing himself as one of the best all-around players the league had ever seen. To Jerry West, that was just the beginning. Oscar didn't just impact the game with his stats. He could control a game in ways that were impossible to deal with, West said. You always felt like you were playing catch-up, even if you had the lead. And his dominance soon turned historic. In the 1961-62 season, he did what many thought was unthinkable, averaging a triple-double with 30.8 points, 12.5 rebounds, and 11.4 assists. Decades later, West still described that feat with awe. It didn't even look real, West confessed. Oscar could see things unfold before anyone else, and for West, their head-to-head battles against each other were as intense as they were educational. West learned more about resilience and leadership in those matchups, even as Robertson became the toughest puzzle he ever had to solve on the court. But no matter what strategies you used, Robertson could adapt. He was like a chess master. Every move you made, he already had an answer, West explained. Some of their battles were legendary. Even when the Lakers had an edge in talent, Robertson remained a threat, capable of single-handedly tipping the scales with his intelligence, poise, and timing. And as much as he inspired West on the court, he may have influenced him even more off it. His intelligence extended beyond the game. His leadership and courage in advocating for player rights became instrumental in changing the NBA. In 1970, Robertson was the driving force behind the Oscar Robertson lawsuit, a legal battle that challenged the league's reserve clause and fundamentally reshaped how players negotiated contracts in free agency. Oscar wasn't just fighting for himself. He fought for all of us, for the future generations of players, West said, speaking to his legacy as more than just a basketball icon. And despite all the accolades, the MVP awards, all NBA selections and records, Robertson's career wasn't without frustration. Though he dominated statistically and carved out a legacy as one of the fiercest competitors the game has ever seen, success did not come easily in the postseason. His team struggled to break through until Robertson joined Kareem and the Milwaukee Bucks during the latter stage of his career. In 1971, he finally captured his elusive championship, winning alongside Kareem in what became a fitting conclusion to his playing days. West was quick to praise Oscar for never losing faith during those trying years. Oscar stayed consistent, no matter what. He believed in his abilities, and eventually, it paid off, West said. The title was the crowning achievement of a player who had already transformed basketball more than anyone could measure, and for that reason, he left an indelible mark on West and the NBA as a whole, forever etched in the annals of basketball history. Now, we move on to one of the greatest rebounder of his era. In fact, without his presence on the court, his team was completely ineffective. Jerry Lucas, the rebounding genius. A player blessed not with freakish athleticism, but with unmatched intellect, Lucas approached rebounding like a chess match, outthinking opponents with surgical precision. Jerry could outthink people on the court, West explained. He wasn't the most athletic player, but his intelligence made him impossible to box out. And to watch him play was to witness a player who made every possession count, combining his near-photographic memory with perfect positioning to dominate the boards. Lucas didn't just rebound. He controlled the game. And before he became one of the greatest rebounders in NBA history, his journey began far from the bright lights of professional basketball. As a high school sensation in Middletown, Ohio, Lucas was already demonstrating the kind of cerebral, methodical approach that would define his career. He wasn't flashy or physically overwhelming, but he was very efficient, earning national attention and a scholarship to Ohio State. In college, Lucas further solidified his reputation as someone with complete control over the court. Leading the Buckeyes to 3 straight NCAA Finals appearances and an NCAA championship in 1960, Lucas turned rebounding into his calling card, setting records that seemed untouchable. By the time he joined the NBA as the Cincinnati Royals' top draft pick in 1963, scouts and analysts were already predicting him to be one of the best rebounding forwards the league had ever seen. But no one knew just how impactful his mind would be when combined with his skill set. And in his rookie season, Lucas wasted no time proving his rebounding supremacy. He averaged 17.4 boards per game, an absolutely staggering feat for any player, let alone a rookie. Lucas didn't rely on brute force or instinct. He studied every element of rebounding, angles, opponent tendencies, and used his intellect to position himself perfectly. Jerry had rebounds figured out like a science, West famously said. He had a feel for where the ball was going before it even left the rim, and his rebounding numbers kept climbing during the prime years of his career, peaking at 19.1 rebounds per game during the 1965-66 season. While most fans focused on buckets and highlight plays, teammates and opponents quickly realized Lucas's rebounding gave his teams an enormous edge in second-chance opportunities, defensive stops, and momentum swings. And despite his rebounding brilliance, Lucas was sometimes overlooked during an era dominated by scoring legends like Wilt and Bill Russell. And to West, however, Lucas was as valuable as anyone in the league. West admired his ability to make the most critical contributions without seeking the spotlight. Jerry was never flashy, but when the game was over, you'd look at the box score and see his fingerprints all over it, West said. And what impressed West even more was his consistency and discipline. While others chased headlines, Lucas refined his craft, cementing his role as the unsung hero of his teams, and his basketball IQ extended beyond rebounding. He was also known for his efficient scoring, ball movement, and ability to stay composed under pressure, traits that made him invaluable to championship contenders later in his career. His career reached its pinnacle when he joined the New York Knicks in 1971 and helped the team secure the 1973 NBA championship, a crowning achievement for one of the game's most tireless workers. And although the Knicks featured stars like Reed, Walt Frazier, and Earl Monroe, he brought a stabilizing presence to the team and played a pivotal role in their success. And off the court, Lucas's intelligence was equally legendary. He was known for his near photographic memory. Lucas would memorize entire playbooks, opponents' tendencies, and even trivia for fun. And his mental sharpness often translated directly into his basketball decisions. Lucas also took pride in mentoring younger players, teaching them the subtleties of rebounding and positioning. For Lucas, greatness was about maximizing impact on every aspect of the game. His cerebral approach enabled him to stay competitive even as his physical abilities waned later in his career. He understood basketball in a way that transcended the court, earning the respect of teammates, coaches, and players across the league. If you talked basketball with Jerry, you would leave feeling smarter, West once said. To Jerry West, Lucas was a pioneer who elevated the very art of basketball intelligence. His presence on the court meant his teams always had an edge, whether in rebounding, energy, or momentum. And more than anything, he symbolized the idea that basketball greatness isn't just born from skill or athleticism. It's forged through preparation, discipline, and unparalleled insight into the game. And finally, the man himself, Michael Jordan, the GOAT. He was transcendent, a player who elevated basketball to heights no one thought imaginable. MJ is basketball royalty. He played the game at a level no one else has, then challenged himself to go even higher, West said in interviews. Watching Jordan dominate from afar, West saw a player who perfectly embodied the fusion of skill, athleticism, and ruthless competitiveness. MJ was rewriting the very script of basketball greatness. With 6 NBA championships, 5 MVP awards, 10 scoring titles, and countless iconic performances on the grandest stages, Jordan delivered consistently at a level that seemed almost mythical. Even years after MJ retired, West continued to admire how easily he pushed beyond human limits. Michael's impact goes beyond his stats. He changed basketball forever, West said, with a tone that carried respect as much as awe. But before Jordan cemented himself as basketball's most recognizable name, his path to becoming his airness was paved with both talent and an unmatched hunger to prove everyone wrong. Entering the league in 1984 as the third overall pick, MJ carried the weight of skepticism that's hard to fathom in hindsight. Critics doubted whether a 6'6" shooting guard could single-handedly turn around a struggling Chicago Bulls franchise in an era dominated by big men. He wasted no time silencing the doubters. He exploded onto the NBA scene as a rookie, averaging 28.2 points per game and earning Rookie of the Year honors. The league quickly realized they weren't witnessing an ordinary star in the making. They were seeing something closer to perfection. And for Jerry West, who made his career as a relentless worker on the court, MJ's early years stood out not just for their brilliance, but for his unique competitiveness. He came into the league like a freight train, and it was never about just getting better. It was about dominating everybody, West said, reflecting on Jordan's mentality. And as the years went by, his reputation transformed from a budding superstar into a legendary figure who crushed expectations relentlessly. And his breakthrough came in 1986 during a playoff series against the Boston Celtics, one of the fiercest dynasties in NBA history. Facing Larry Bird and one of the league's greatest teams, MJ dropped 63 points in Game 2, a record that still stands today. And afterward, Bird called Jordan God disguised as Michael Jordan, and that performance didn't lead to a series win, but it sent shockwaves through the league. He wasn't just here to compete, he was here to dominate. West, watching from afar, admitted that moments like that solidified MJ's place in basketball lore. He had this gift, but it wasn't just his physical abilities. It was the way he wanted the most pressure moments, every single time, West said. Jordan seemed to thrive under pressure, turning high stakes into fuel for greatness. And by the late 1980s, MJ had become an unstoppable scorer, leading the league in points while delivering jaw-dropping highlights. But critics questioned whether he could win. Could his scoring brilliance translate into championships? MJ answered definitively in the 1990s, turning the Chicago Bulls into one of sport's greatest dynasties. From 1991 to 1993, Jordan led the Bulls to 3 straight championships, crushing teams with a combination of talent and an unrelenting mentality to outwork everyone. Then came his first retirement in 1993, a shocking announcement that temporarily halted his reign. And that chapter added a layer of intrigue to Jordan's legacy as he stepped away from basketball during his prime. And when he returned in 1995, people wondered if he could even approach his former dominance. West, like the rest of the basketball world, watched in amazement as MJ not only reclaimed his throne, but strengthened it. From 1996 to 1998, Jordan and the Bulls delivered another trio of titles, capped off by his unforgettable shot over Brian Russell in Game 6 of the 1998 Finals. And that was poetic, a fitting finale for the greatest player ever. For West, his greatness was never confined to the numbers, the titles, or even the highlights that transcended generations. His incomparable winning mentality was what separated him from every other player. I've never seen someone who hated losing more than Michael Jordan, West admitted in interviews, adding, every part of him, not just his game, his attitude, and the way he carried himself, was about competing. And what stood out to West was his ability to answer every challenge with force, whether it came from critics, players, or the moment itself. Big games didn't scare him. They ignited him, West marveled. And beyond his championships, his Air Jordan sneakers revolutionized the industry, while his competitive drive became a kind of mythology. West often emphasized that Jordan's presence impacted basketball on a scale that went far beyond the court. And for him, MJ set a standard that players continue to chase today, a standard that feels almost unattainable. These players shaped Jerry's basketball journey in unique ways. These legends pushed him to excel, challenged his skills, and ultimately left a lasting impression on one of basketball's greatest minds. All right, that's all for today. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.